Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. This week, Sub Rosa from TNG. Sub Rosa, and It's All Been Trucked Before. Speaking of getting crazy, maybe crazy is the wrong word, but out of sorts, weird, different. Come meet us on Facebook. It's All Been Trucked Before, spelled just like it sounds. We're having a lot of fun out there. A lot of funny little things we're putting out there. Get in there with us. Tell us what you think of the shows. Tell us what you think of our post. Let's talk. Get weird with us. And we're going to get real weird now, just like this show. It's Sub Rosa, and It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. Your skeleton crew has become even more skeletal just in time for Halloween, even though by the time you're listening to this, it's way past Halloween. We're recording this a month before Halloween.
That's
you're
right.
listening to this in May. So happy May. Anyway, some of your regular history here.
This is Stephen.
And this is Jimmy-Jerome. Near here, Sans Keith, which unfortunately I think is going to be more regular. Well, he's still going to hopefully pop in from time to time, but he is now working evenings at Conflict.
But if you have complaints, you can still go email them to Keith at iabd.com.
Exactly. And hopefully we'll get his thoughts here and there whenever he can spare us some time.
Obviously, we'll miss out having him around.
Absolutely. He's very welcome on the show whenever he wants to be. We are not here to talk about him. We're here to talk about candle ghosts and their sexual escapades. First impressions on Sub Rosa.
So usually when you give us a heads up on an episode and you're like, this episode's supposed to be great or supposed to be terrible or whatever, I either just forget that we had the conversation, or B, I tend to go contrarian in my mind. And in this instance, I think you had told us this was not a well-regarded episode, and It did not disappoint. It is a weird episode. I saw it a couple spots where it was voted or considered, one of the weirdest episodes of the franchise, of the Star Trek franchise, let alone this series. And it just feels like somebody wanted to do a Scotland ghost sex show, and they crammed it into Star Trek. And I can't say it's uninteresting, but I can say it's not good. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one I've never seen before. It's widely regarded as the worst Next Gen episode. I still say Shades of Grey is worse.
I do too.
I would agree. Code of Honor is worse. But
this got that too.
I will agree this is probably in the bottom 5. Not to spoil rankings, but it's pretty damn bad. There are some things I really like, and we'll talk about concepts, not executions, that I really liked.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. But God, this was bad. And what surprises me even more is when I look at the credits for the show and see it's directed by Jonathan Frakes. So it was directed by Jonathan Frakes. Teleplay by Brannon Braga.
Yeah.
Brannon Braga, who's one of the regulars. Television story by Jerry Taylor, who was a showrunner by this point before she went to take over Voyager. Based on material by Gianna F. Gallo. This is Gianna's only credit. So I can't speak to her. But when you have Brannon Braga and Frakes, you expect better. What I will say before we even get into this is there's a little show out for the last 8 years. And by little, I mean the most popular show to ever air on the Starz television network called Outlander. That is a Scottish love story with time travel. Slight sci-fi bend, but it really is more the personal romance and drama by Ron D. Moore, who is Brannon Braga's writing partner for a lot of the biggest Next Gen, like the Next Gen series finale and the first 2 films were written by Brannon Braga and Ronald D. Moore. And it makes me sad Ron D. Moore did not write this episode.
Yeah.
Because I feel like maybe he was like, oh, Brannon, you really screwed that up. We're good buddies, but now I'm going to go do it right. Because this to me is the crappy version of Outlander in a way.
Wow.
I mean, time travel, but it's crappy Outlander is what I'm calling it.
I mean, there isn't, but there kind of is, because those people are dressed up like, and
romance in the Scottish Highlands is the horror of Outlander. So, with a slight sci-fi. So yeah, just terrible, terrible episode, which is not, I do want to say right here in the front though, Gates McFadden sold it as much as an actress possibly could.
She committed,
not a bit of the blame should land on her.
No, she committed. Like, she's like, all right, whatever. And, I've talked about this before with, when people talk about Shatner, and I'm like, with some of those scripts, he was working real hard. And that's the stuff people hit on, not the really good understated stuff he did in other episodes. But yeah, she's having worked so hard here. Whew. It comes off like a Skinamax movie to me without the skin. Which,
Good way to put it.
Yeah,
and good way to put it.
And I know for a fact there are several ghost sex Skinamax movies. And yeah,
And
so
you have their names that I can write down right now.
I could get you a list. I am sure very quickly.
It reminded me a little bit of Exorcism of Emily Rose. That's a great movie.
Oh yeah,
I'm not a horror fan. I love that movie.
Yeah,
the sheets getting pulled off and stuff. That was it's just so poorly executed at every turn.
Yeah,
and the story made no sense. So honestly, the script was the biggest mistake. Well, I did think it was well directed. I can't blame Jonathan Frakes for this either.
I thought early on, I was like, I liked it. It was just like, okay, there's a funeral and there's the usual. There's 20 people on the entire planet. There's a small crowd, which what a bummer. But
it's a colony. Colonies never have
her grandmother was older. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. All right, we're talking about the history of the planet and Scottish and all that stuff, which seems like already a red flag or whatever, but still kind of chill. And I'm just like, all right, I'm waiting for the twist that introduces what our struggle's going to be.
Remember, we had Up the Long Ladder with the Scottish colonists. That was wonderful. Where Riker was romancing the one woman, the redhead.
That one was also, and I'm talking about the bat-ass crazy episodes I like Face of the Enemy. That's a good example of that one there. This one is bat-ass crazy, but it's not fun or
not in a good way.
A little fun, but just not good. Yeah, those are good, fun. Those are crazy in a good way. This was not.
Just suffers because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it gets into that thing, and you and I are definitely more in this camp than Keith and a lot of other people apparently, but I don't want fantasy in my sci-fi, and I'd say that as a Star Wars fan. But
Star Wars isn't sci-fi. Star Wars is pure fantasy.
It is.
We start with Beverly delivering a graveside eulogy. Mm-hmm. Picard and Troy are there, and they're all in the dress uniforms. That was my first fashion note. Dress uniforms. We haven't seen them in a while. I enjoyed seeing them. I'm glad we had them.
Yeah, my first fashion note right off the bat was repeat whatever Crusher compliment I've been doing. And then our friends at Fashion It So, I thought I had it up here. They mentioned that, she had time to get a blowout and get the right makeup and everything. But, as always, Gates McFadden
dressed up to go to a funeral. They don't show up. They don't help schlubby.
No.
I did think, as we're at the graveside, first of all, who's he? The handsome young guy that there's a glance of exchange, which obviously we're going to find out.
Yeah.
But I also noticed that the gravestone immediately behind the funeral happening had the name McFly on it.
I took a picture of that too. Because there's a scene where later in the episode where he's standing there for a long time and McFly is taking up half the screen.
Yeah, that was not an accident.
No.
I mean, there is an Memory Alpha entry just for that gravestone.
Ha!
I'm looking at it. It was in the same cemetery where Felicia Howard was laid to rest, and that's all it says. There's no information there should be some trivia of this was a tribute to Back to the Future, because it had to be, right? There's no way it's not.
Right. It had, yeah. I read the name on the other gravestone, but it wasn't in my picture, so.
Oh, I couldn't make out the names on any of the other ones. I was either too distracted by the scene or they were too far away.
Yeah, but I was just okay, well, you guys are at it. You're just you know what? We're going to give people this while we're doing all this other crazy stuff.
I was fine with the McFly reference, honestly.
I didn't.
Especially if you're going to do Scottish. And I don't know if McFly is a Scottish name, but it's a Mick name. So that obviously is
Yeah.
I did notice the gravediggers were still using the same shovels my father has at our house now. And I get as the episode goes on and they talk about the founding of this colony that there's a reason they might have this. And yet at the same time, if there's a little bit of convenience you have, at least upgrade to a digger from the 20th century and not the same shovels you have from ages ago.
Well, yeah, they want to be very authentic Scotland.
Well, my first thought was this is the Scottish Highlands, which we were then told. This very much seemed odd to me that they went out of their way to explain that this was a colony based on the Scottish Highlands. And I wondered if they did that because it's harder to justify in the 24th century that any part of the traditional Scottish Highlands remain. It's easier to say, hey, that's gone, but we created a colony that copied it, rather than trying to combine the two technologies. But that's really the only explanation that makes sense, because otherwise, why the hell do you do the Scottish Highlands as a colony instead of just in the Scottish Highlands?
Yeah, and it isn't necessary in any way whatsoever.
Oh, it's not relevant. I guess the only relevance is, having been a big fan of Outlander, which I already mentioned, there's a mysticism to the Scottish Highlands that, because of the environment, the climate, everything, that sometimes it seems like the fog, there are ghostly forms. There's a wildness to it that sparks the imagination, ghosts and stuff. And so that's my best guess on the tie-in. Well, otherwise, you're right. Otherwise, there's no reason. And there's other cultures you can do the same. Maybe it's a Transylvanian colony. But,
right. Well, we have the fog on the bridge later to that end, to what you were saying. Whenever I hear Outlander, I think of the movie Outland, good sci-fi movie, Sean Connery, and remake of High Noon. It's the sci-fi version of High Noon.
Okay.
And Highlander, which there could only be one. So I smushed them together. I think Highlander is Scottish.
If you have not seen Outlander, A+ recommendation. They leave the graveside. Beverly goes to her grandmother's place. Why is there already a fire going in the fireplace when she enters this abandoned house?
I don't know.
That's reason number 1 of 57. I didn't really count. I'm guessing 57 of why this episode doesn't make sense. They had me for the first scene, and then they left.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting setup. What's going to do the back? I know something's going to come in and ruin it. And I'm like, yep, there it is. Yep.
So we get mentioned right here at the beginning that Beverly was raised by her grandmother. And I was waiting the whole episode for it to tie in that something about this candle ghost thing is what led to her mother's untimely death. But it never connected or mentioned. Bummed me out. Like, I want to take a couple of lines to justify I'm raised by my grandmother because my mother rejected the Force Ghost. And then that makes some more interest. I say Force Ghost because that makes some more interesting a battle within Beverly of your mother who you were directly descended from, or the grandmother that raised you, nature versus nurture. Are you going to reject? That actually would add interest to this episode that they just did not do. She's raised by her grandmother. That's it. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like, and I'm jumping ahead, but I feel like the continuity of, 800 years of my ancestors were raped essentially by this guy.
Which puts it back to the 1600s.
Can we not have that be canon? Because it's not in my canon. I reject it wholesale.
I mean, I think we're going to keep coming back to that for sure. Because I also rejected wholesale.
Yeah.
For Beverly Crusher, and I admit that had we not had Star Trek Picard's third season, where we get Beverly Crusher returning and finally being badass as she's always deserved to be, it would be so much harder at this point to justify that Beverly Crusher would never fall for this crap.
Yep.
But now that we have the full, I don't know about full, because there's still a chance we could get more Beverly in the future.
Sure.
But now that we have this later story, I feel more justified in arguing Beverly would never fall for this crap, and it's unbelievable she even got as far down the path as she did, even though, and I appreciate this, it was ultimately her own individual rejection of the scenario that let her escape. She was not saved.
Right.
She saved herself. That's the only redeeming quality of this episode.
This is true.
I'm so glad Picard and Riker didn't swoop in and save her.
That's what I was expecting too, and after I've been crapping on this episode and a lot of Star Wars, I remembered Wolf in the Fold kind of had a similar character.
Yes.
TOS. But that was better, much better done. It was more of a murder whodunit and did Scotty doing that stuff. Wasn't as good. I feel like I'd rewatch. I don't think I loved it as much as I did as a kid, but still better. Faint praise saying it's better than this, but
if we ever get to the end of the Star Trek released episodes, I am all for going back and visiting the original series with new context. I don't think we go through the whole.
Sure.
I don't think we go through the whole franchise again.
Right.
But we could spend 2 years just doing the original series with the context.
Yeah.
And end it with, what was it, Turnabout Intruder, whatever the final episode of the original was.
Friday, yeah.
I would be fine tacking 79 episodes to the end of this to revisit with context.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Especially if it ends with current Trek where we have Discovery and Strange New Worlds fresh in our heads, to go back and revisit original would be awesome.
That's what I mean. The Cage and the Menagerie are constantly in my brain. Would
still hold up.
Yeah,
still hold
up.
They're
so good. They're so great.
And Sitting on the Edge and Trouble at Tribbles. And for me, Barry 7. Assignment Earth. Assignment Earth is one of my favorites.
It is such a fun show.
Anyway.
Balance of Terror, of course.
Great. Journey to Babel is another good one. Amok Time.
Yep.
Anyway, we could keep going on, but
go listen to those episodes.
No, I did not watch the full original series till we watched it together. And at this point, I think we are on the same page. The original kicked Next Gen's butt in which series was better. And I may have an argument for DS9, but none of the other Star Treks until Strange New Worlds are going to be in the competition for best, in my opinion. We've got the original, we got DS9, and we got Strange New Worlds. Everything else is second tier.
Yeah. And again,
you're not that far into DS9, but Strange New Worlds.
Yeah. A lot of this isn't a rewatch. A lot of this is just a watch for me. But but I'm excited to see them. So
yeah, Voyager is going to be about half of Voyager is going to be a watch for me, whereas all of DS9 is a rewatch. Yeah. But then all of New Trek will be a rewatch, except for you for Picard, because
Picard will be new. Yeah,
Picard will be new for you.
Unless I watch
I've watched all of New Trek. Right. So yeah, you've got some New Trek left, but yeah. But yeah, just toss out right now, and we get to the end of Trek. We do original series again, and then end the podcast.
If there's not any more, if they've stopped doing Trek by then,
let's hope they never do. But if they do, the original series in the end.
I look forward along those same lines when we do Lower Decks by then. All the context I'm gonna have, because each episode I'm like, oh, I know that now.
You're getting a bunch of context because we're almost done Next Gen, but you're missing DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise context.
Oh yeah.
And while I say half of Voyager will be new, it's more like 70% of Enterprise will be new for me. And it'll be good. Anyway, Troy visits Beverly in the house, lets her have some alone time with the candle. I already knew this was a ghost candle thing, so when she left her with the candle, I already felt sinister vibes coming.
Yeah.
It almost felt like Troy's like, let me let you have some alone time with the candle, which is ridiculous because the candle wasn't even a thing yet, really. But
no, it didn't make any sense. And I guess it makes sense. I wrote down, Crusher's shocked about all the things she knew about her grandmother, but I guess her grandmother raised her. Maybe it makes more sense because I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot I don't know about my grandmothers.
Sure.
This is a little later, maybe not too much later, when
click on IMDb things. Hang on for half a second. I'm sorry. I was looking at the IMDb page for this episode, and there is user lists on the side, and it says all Star Trek episodes by rating, and then nearly all. Space Seed is the #1 episode of Star Trek of all time, followed by A Taste of Armageddon, and City on the Edge of Forever comes in 3. Mirror Mirror 4, Return to Tomorrow 5, Enterprise Incident 6, and then Next Gen comes in at number 7 for Measure of the Man. I'm sorry, this list is full. Whoever created this list needs to go away forever. I'm sorry, go back to what you were going to say.
Oh, sorry.
I just got really upset about it.
I'm trying to think what, Crusher's like, I fell asleep reading a particularly odd chapter in my grandmother's journal. And,
oh my God.
And she's like,
that's like 5 notes down for me, but I lumped on that. Why? If it's erotic, why are you still reading it about your grandmother that raised you?
Yeah,
you shut the diary and go away.
I do like the blow line, or not the blow line, but Troy's ends the scene with, I'd read 2 chapters.
Well, because she was trying to have another happy dream.
Yeah.
So, I guess this is 24th century is more evolved than us, that it's okay to think of your relatives having a sexual being because it should be okay. We're too uptight about sex in this country, in this culture. I agree with all that. Sure. And that's why I'm not like flipping out about it. But also, if I read my grandparents' erotic diaries, I'd probably put them down. Yeah. And it's so jumping back a bit.
Yeah.
We're introduced to the character of Ned Quint, played by Shay Duffin, best known for Memoirs of an Invisible Man, Seabiscuit, the 2007 Beowulf, and the movie Leprechaun, where he played O'Grady.
Yeah.
Beowulf in 2007 being his final credit. He died in 2010. But yeah, he actually was in Titanic. He was in, like I said, Seabiscuit. He was in a bunch of stuff. She comes in and tries to steal the candle, which is real weird. Like, he says there's this whole curse and everything, but they never get into what he knows, how much he knows. And that's where it kind of falls apart for me. Like, you expect him to shed some light on what's going on, but he doesn't. He's just like, cursed! Don't touch it!
Yeah.
And then if you're going to not listen to me based on no information because I've given you no context, I wash my hands of you and I'm done.
And it was such a over the top character, and
over the top. I like Shea Duffin. I've seen him in things. I enjoy him. I don't think it was his fault, but God, it was bad.
Yeah.
They talk about their climate tech going kooky. This is when they introduced the governor of the colony, Maturin, played by Michael Keenan, best known for 2 episodes of DS9, where he played 2 different characters, one character, Patrick, in 1 episode each of season 6 and 7. That's going to be a Bashir storyline. He also does a 1 episode of Voyager and a 5-episode arc on Dallas as Keller in seasons 13 and 14.
Oh.
So lesser known actor. Again, I felt like you're giving too much exposition where we don't need it. Here's an alien that decided to settle in the Scottish Highlands because he admires it, even though he has no context or reason. You don't need all those layers.
No.
It's simple and straightforward.
Let us wonder why this guy decided to settle here. Let us make it up.
But he talks about the climate tech going kooky, and it was very much like it's actually fine, but if you got a minute, just look before you go, which is, very much like your parents saying like, look at this computer thing that's not working before you leave, but it's okay, we'll be fine if you don't.
Yeah.
The trope. They talk about how Felicia Howard, Beverly's grandmother, was 100 years old and had a lover that was 34 years old. And they're like, oh, good for her. And I'm like, it's good for her. But also, if this were reversed, we'd all be screaming, creep, creep, creep. Right?
You're right. You are right.
And the whole way Picard takes it, I do give credit for Picard, where he's basically just like, good for her. 100-year-old with a 34-year-old lover?
Yeah.
That's probably because Picard at that point's thinking, well, when I'm 100, if I have a 34, if Beverly and Vash reject me and I have a 34-year-old lover, whatever, more power to you. Then we see the candle light itself. So we know there's a ghost. We know there's something. This is the scene in Beverly's quarters where the sheets pull down and the shoulder of her nightgown goes down.
Yeah.
It wasn't a rousing scene, but it was also a creepy as hell scene.
Yep. Like, what just happened?
I mean, that goes into the Troy scene that you mentioned before. Where Troy and her talking about it over drinks. Troy is a little bit too into hearing about Beverly's grandmother's sex life, but I also think that actually works for the character of Troy. Yes. I think she is happy for whoever's horny.
Yeah.
Much less judgmental than most.
Yes.
Quint says the house is haunted. Obviously, it's not. And they talk about, Quint tells Beverly, if you fall for this, if you don't reject the candle and the curse, you're going to be buried soon. And I'm thinking, why does he think that? Because Beverly's grandmother, despite all of this, lived to be 100. So why is Beverly at her age now, and I'm not going to venture a guess at her age, but I know it's less than half of 100.
Yeah.
Why is she going to be in the ground soon when Beverly's grandmother lived for 100 years with it just fine?
It's just another, and even the whole weather system or weather control system subplot is like, we're going to give you a little science to act like this actually is a science, part of the science, but really we're not. We're just
I know there was some scientific explanation for the being that was seducing her, but
plasma being or something like that, but whatever.
I completely tuned out to that.
Yeah.
We're talking about Ronan, played by Duncan Ragar, who's best known for The Monster Squad, playing Count Dracula in 1987. Violet, Flying Virus, Wizards and Warriors, 8 episodes of that, and 4 episodes of the 80s version of V, which would have been before this. He also was in an episode of Trek Untold, the podcast series in 2021, which is interesting because I just wouldn't expect that actor to be pulled back in for anything. I mean, he did do 3 episodes of DS. Oh, okay. He will play. I thought this character was in more than 3 episodes, but there's a character in DS9 he's going to play named Shakar. He's only in 3 episodes and it's 3 seasons. It's 3, 4, and 5. But you've heard mention that Kira was in the Shakar cell. Yeah. So let's just say Beverly's not the only Star Trek character seduced by this actor. We're going to get him in 3 episodes of DS9 as a past love interest, present love interest for Kira as Kira's cell leader, resistance cell leader.
Interesting.
Did not realize it was the same guy. that makes sense why he might be in the Shrek Retold, because this part should not earn him a role in that. I mean, he did what he needed to do. It was just that part sucked, and I'm sorry for anybody that had to play it.
The dialogue is. The line is, I had to find it. I love you, Beverly, just as I loved Felisa before you, which I wrote. I love you just like I loved your grandma. I mean, the guy obviously has the time, as we find out, for 800 years. And that's when I realized, essentially, I can't remember the character's name from Dazed and Confused. He's McConaughey in Dazed and Confused. He's like, yeah, except maybe it's the other way around, because he stays the same age and they get older.
Understand why he might be attracted to different members of the same family line.
Sure.
But when Beverly learns that was her grandmother's lover, for her to even entertain the idea, the only reason I can overlook this, because otherwise I'd be totally creeped out of Nikki. I mean, we've had movies where it's like an accident that they slept with two members of different generations, but not on purpose. Yeah. I guess Beverly is clearly so brainwashed that she's not in her right mind. Because there's no way she goes with him without some level of brainwashing and manipulation. Right. She would never willingly choose the crap she goes through.
I saw that Michael Dorn said this is essentially a ripoff of an Anne Rice novel, I think. So I think
I have not read Anne Rice novels, but based on the little I know, I believe it.
I feel like there's some level of Dracula's, sexual power, over women or whatever kind of thing going on here. But still, it's eye rolling, however you want to say it.
So there's a whole bunch of flowers, somewhat ridiculous, and he somehow can interfere with technology. I guess that's the science thing.
Yeah.
And he attacks with like green light beams, which is weird. Beverly falls so fast. That has to be gaslighting and manipulation and mind control. That's just not believable. There's a scene where she wants to leave and he's touching her face and trying to convince her to stay. And his hand never leaves her face. And God love Gates McFadden for committing to the scene, but it's like her face is glued to his hand. Every hand she's moving her face.
Yeah.
It was so distracting. And it ends with her resigning from the, which is just crazy.
It seems like at this point it would beg some kind of medical examination in and of itself. Yeah, I
Dr. Salar. This is where we need Dr. Salar to return.
Yeah,
maybe if Susie Plaxton had been available, we would have gotten that scene.
On the one hand, you don't want to be like the one, the chief medical officer who's a woman on your ship. You don't want to be like, oh, this woman is being hysterical, but she's not. That's not what she does. So there's something wrong. You got to know there's something wrong. There's something going on here. So yeah, that's.
Troy thankfully goes to Picard about Ronan because somebody has to. I think Picard's confused. He doesn't want to hold Beverly back. They have a personal relationship, but he also doesn't want to be the one that oversteps the boundaries. And I actually get Picard's behavior in this episode, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's just, but then he does catch her having candle sex. and then the whole him wanting to meet Ronan and her eye color changing. It's like, I wish we got it a little more of Sherlock Picard putting the pieces together and figuring it out. Because instead it seems like he's along for the ride and he's a concerned friend, but not in a way that's taking charge of the situation and actually fixing it.
Yes.
And I'm not saying he should rescue Beverly. I don't want that, which I guess is contradicting the other things I'm saying, but it's just really weird the way he's cool with it and just along for it.
Mm-hmm. Trying too hard. Yeah. Or going a little overboard.
Ronan says to Picard that he and Beverly are going to be together for the rest of our lives. Based on how on the nose this episode was, he should have said the rest of her life, right? Because I know our lives is the better phrase, but this episode doesn't even try to do, like, I feel like he was already such a cartoon villain. He should have said the rest of her life, like, dramatically. But actually that would have been believable because he does look slightly younger than her at this point.
Yes.
Ronan zaps Picard, but Beverly saves him. There's such an arbitrary rule here. If anybody Ronan wants to kill, if it's Quint, he's dead. If it's Picard or Geordi or Data, and of course somehow Data reacts the same as a biological being, they're
Yeah. It's very, we talked about earlier, fantasy, horror, whatever you want. It's a lot of those tropes, and I want a world that has some rules or no rules. If you want to go, if you're not going to have any rules, fine, then I'll hang in there for you, but
with at killing Quint and not killing Picard because Beverly chooses Picard over Ronan and saves him. But then having Geordi and Data zapped was weird because it's like, oh no, just anybody can survive this. Quint just didn't. Like, okay. It would be, if it was a thing about Beverly making a choice, it's interesting, but that wasn't what it was.
Yeah.
She goes, and then Beverly goes absolutely insane when Quint leaves, when he's like, come join me at the gravesite. And Beverly's like, no, I gotta save Picard. And then she's like grabbing her face and again, great on Gates McFadden for committing, but it just was so weird and bizarre.
The good people at Shaka and Net who do the transcript I often read.
Yep.
They threw in one of the scenes with Crusher and our guy Ronan. Are you Ronan? Ronan. Yes, you saw me at the funeral. Beverly has a little orgasm. Who are you? I'm a spirit. So, yeah. I'd love this, and that's essentially my alternate episode. I'd love to see an episode where that kind of stuff happens, but not like this.
No. So this brings us to our last guest star because Ronan actually possesses Beverly's dead grandmother.
Yeah.
Beverly's dead grandmother was played by Helen Albertini Dow, who died in 2015. You probably remember her. I think she's best known, and IMDb agrees with me, for The Wedding Singer as Adam Sandler's grandmother that does the rap.
Yes.
Also Wedding Crashers, 54, Memoirs of an Invisible Man, New Girl, Family Guy, Shameless, so many guest spots. Seinfeld.
Yeah.
She did episode Seinfeld. We haven't talked Seinfeld in a while.
That.
Oh, she played Mama in the episode.
The Bosco episode, yes. I don't know what the name
season
of the episode.
1. Or sorry, season 7. The secret.
Yeah. She's Peterman's grandmother? Mother, I think. Yeah.
To Jay Peterman's mother. That's awesome.
Yeah. And George.
I need to watch that. I haven't seen an episode. I would like to.
Yeah.
So obviously, like everybody's favorite grandma for movies.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I didn't recognize her in the moment.
I didn't either. But when I saw it research, I'm like, oh, of course it is.
Yeah,
she worked. She worked.
Perfect casting. It's a shame it was such a small part.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it was her, we should have had flashbacks and a lot more.
Yes.
Beverly kills Ronan, which, as we said earlier, at least she's not like saved by the knight in shining armor. And then apparently, like, there's some compatibility with an energy matrix that she didn't have to kill him, and there's this whole confusing science thing. But then her eyes are fixed, and the point at the end is, well, he did make my grandma happy. And I'm like, really? That's the lesson you're taking away from this? Are you freaking kidding me?
Well, she says you might call it a family tradition, and all I could hear was Garth Brooks singing Family Tradition, and I did not make me feel good. I mean, that's all okay, whatever. I'm not a big Garth Brooks fan. I'm not a hater, but it just, that whole connotation just didn't sound good to me. They kept saying some fun. And I don't know what the hell that is.
We've heard that in other episodes.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to understand what it is.
We probably don't.
They can change phases of things, I guess. Yeah. But we've heard it in other episodes of Star Trek. My other fashion note, besides the dress uniforms, I just liked the Scottish traditional wear, even though it made
yeah. Our folk
wear the plaid.
So STTNGfashion.tumblr.com. They talked about it too, like, you know, and they were surprised that the blanket that Crusher uses when she decides to get cozy and read the journal wasn't tartan. It was paisley. Like, why not go all the way with it? I'm like, yeah, they should. I'm surprised they didn't.
My alternate episode is just Outlander, which I already talked about. So my better version,
just one of the Skinamax movies, or this one's a bigger lift. And I'm putting you and I in charge, but keep it up to. Essentially, we write a bunch of good Crusher episodes where she gets used properly.
Name one good Crusher episode.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we need to write a bunch of good ones.
I did listen to It's All Been the Greatest Generation guys before this one. And they said, like, Gates is the one that left the cast. She was fired in season 2. And part of why she was fine with leaving then was they did not serve her character well in season 1. What part of her was like, I'm just going to ride this to the end if this is how they're going to treat me? This is the last Beverly-centric episode.
I feel like she gets good stuff as the secondary character, but when it's a Crusher episode, it's like a mega episode on Family Guy, like we talked about. Here's the remote, folks. Go ahead. We won't blame you.
murky memory of the series finale novelization, having not watched the series finale ever. I'm so looking forward to it. I think she has good stuff in the series finale.
Okay.
And then the next time she'll have good stuff. She's got like a scene in Star Trek First Contact, like one of the films. Star Trek Picard season 3. They did right by her. Finally, 30 years later, she got a season that did right by her, but it took 30 years. And for her alone, I'm so glad there was a Next Gen reunion in Picard season 3 because she rocks Picard season 3, but she never gets anything good until then.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I am supremely glad of the 7 Next Gen leads besides Picard. She has one of the bigger roles in season 3 because she deserves it. Good.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we always enjoyed her.
Yeah.
And she deserved better than she got, for sure.
I will say, I think Geordi has the second smallest role, and he deserved better in Picard season 3.
Yep. Yeah.
I would say Troy has the smallest role, but Troy's actually had some stuff that's good. So
yeah, I think so. Yeah. I only have a few more notes. He said,
do it because I'm done until rankings.
I couldn't find it in the transcript, but he says something along the lines of "I love you like you've never been loved before." And like, what a braggart! But I guess he knows what he's talking about.
He's actually, I mean, it's not a braggart if he's right?
Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, she was. Yeah, they kept saying
she said they were her best orgasms ever.
You're right. Every time he said or they said symmetry in the Scottish accent, it sounded like they were saying symmetry. And then I did write down the other gravestone. It was Nader.
Oh, like the presidential candidate, but he wouldn't have been yet.
He wasn't. I don't think he ran a 92. Yeah. He didn't ruin anything.
I wonder what that was a tribute to.
He was still a well-regarded consumer advocate at that point, but I don't think he'd run yet for office.
I mean, if you even Google TNG Nader sub Rosa, there are literally no results.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the like Wikipedia for Sub Rosa comes up, but it says missing Nader, show results with Nader. So I count that as no results. Same thing with Sub Rosa, the memory alpha has no results of Nader in it.
Interesting.
Although they did say, I do see a comment on some message board that says the real Nader of TNG is Sub Rosa. Using Nader as, yeah.
Maybe
I guess that works.
Maybe that was a play on words by putting it on the gravestones. Somebody in the back was like, "This is terrible." That's hilarious.
I don't know.
That would be funny, but that's all I got to.
What is the meaning of the title, by the way?
That's a good question. I kept thinking it had something to do with that rose or something.
Well, it wasn't a rose. So Sub Rosa from the dictionary means happening or done in secret.
Okay.
So I guess that's it's a Sub Rosa is Latin for under the rose and essentially means secrecy.
Okay.
Of course, it's a hyphenated word on Merriam-Webster, but it's not. Well, no, it can be hyphenated. It also cannot be. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then why weren't the flowers roses? Why were they some other flower?
Right. I don't know. It seems like they should have been.
Who was your annoyance in Sub Rosa besides everyone?
Yeah,
who?
Ronan. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry to say this, and it's certainly not Gates McFadden, but Beverly, just the way she was so mind controlled and so manipulated early on and was totally out of character really bothered me.
Yeah, I think it would have been more. Maybe it's more interesting if she actually does just fall for this guy like she has at different times. But
right,
yeah.
Who are you gonna drink with?
Gates McFadden would just be like, "Hey, sorry, good try. You tried.
Wait, give us 25 years. We'll make it up to you."
Yeah, they did you dirty.
They really did.
It's like,
I'm going with Maturin, the governor, because he actually was an interesting character to me.
Yeah.
We didn't need him. He was extraneous, but I want to know more about why he, as an alien, settled in the Scottish Highlands. Ranking the episode, the bottom so far of this season is the interface, where Geordi's distracted by the loss of his mother.
Oh.
That was a really bad episode, too.
It was bad.
I might actually be tempted to go above it. Barely.
I think I like that one better. I like the interface slightly better. Well,
I don't feel strong enough to argue.
I feel like there were parts that I liked, even though I ended up obviously not liking it.
Geordi was better served in that episode than Crusher was served in this.
Yeah.
But neither episode made a lot of sense.
No.
This episode does make less sense. So I'll give you Sub Rosa as the bottom.
Yeah.
We don't need to fight it. Sub Rosa can be the bottom. Above the interface is Force of Nature. That's the galactic speed limit. I don't think we're going to argue with belongs about that.
Nah.
That wasn't a good episode, but
if Keith comes in hot in a couple weeks and is like, Sub Rosa should be higher, then yeah.
If Keith ever returns again.
Yeah.
I don't think we can count on that. No more running it to Keith. We're going to just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend a bunch of time going back with Keith unless he does somehow manage to pop in every 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Next week, Deep Space Nine, the Armageddon game. Chief O'Brien, who still doesn't particularly like Dr. Bashir, must rely on him. That's the IMDb. I did not add that. Must rely on him when the two are stranded on a planet and O'Brien is infected with a deadly, fast-moving virus. I don't think that's the summary of this episode. I mean, the first part, sure, but stranded while he's infected, that's not the summary of this episode.
No.
Anyway, until then, unlike O'Brien or Ronan, like Beverly's grandmother, Felicia Howard, live long.
Yeah. All right. And prosper.
I mean, if you're with Ronan, you probably will prosper.
I guess, he'll take over your being, but
I mean, as much as we didn't want to take over the being, Beverly's grandmother seemingly had a really nice life with him.
Yeah. I mean, he saw her out, so maybe he's Angel of Death.
At least he's loyal.
Yeah, Angel of Death.
No
should won 101. Yeah.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?